Welcome back, and today we're here to talk about grosses for musicals, and yeah, okay, this is not working. Guys, I'm having a hard time putting into words the video, so let's get into it. And Juliet went from 91.85 to 91.12, and 1,107,122 to 1,104,596 this week. Another solid week for Anne Juliet. Beautiful Noise went from 71% last week to 63% this week, and 920K last week to this week's 857K. Not an amazing hold, but again, A Beautiful Noise has never done amazing box office, and as long as it's doing 850K plus, it is doing perfectly fine. And again, these are two musicals that have done relatively well the entire time that they've been here. So I don't talk about these two as much because it's pretty simple. It's making $1 million. It's doing 800, 900K. It's working. It's surviving. It's not going anywhere, and there's nothing more to say. Back to the Future had a pretty big drop in capacity, going from 89% to 77%, and 1,299,452 last week to this week's $1 million this week, which is one of its lowest weeks ever. Not gonna mean much because we have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas, we have all these big holidays coming up, so I expect that in the long run, this week doesn't really matter, it doesn't really count, because it's gonna do very well, you know, in the next couple weeks. Gutenberg went from 93% to 84%, and $1 million to 902,688 for 128K plus drop. Pretty significant, but again, it doesn't even need to make $1 million to survive, so it still was an incredible week, but still, a big drop. Not great, but again, perfectly fine. And it is a limited engagement. Hadestown had a big increase, going from 96% to 93%, and 681K to 712K. That's because Reeve Carney left this past week. But again, I don't know how they're still surviving, and I guess they're going to have a new Persephone in February, so it's going to be here. But I'll just say it now, this musical is going to close on a very weak note because it's done. It's not making the money it used to. They should close this in January, but maybe Jordan Fisher will bring box office back up. Again, I don't know that if that's going to happen or not, but if it does, I don't want it to go, but I'm just saying it how it is. Hadestown is not doing well and is going to close next year. Hamilton went from 100% to 99%, and 1,941,374 to 1,751,671 this week. Harmony went from 91% to 82%, and 643K to 625K. Not amazing, but for the reviews that it's got and the kind of mixed reception from audiences and critics, this is actually pretty good. And for a new musical to be doing 6s and 7s is a lot better than something like a Kimbo that did 5s and 4s, and it is a step in the right direction. However, I do think it's going to struggle at the box office, and if we get to 4s and 5s and 3s, which normally doesn't happen, I think we're going to start to be concerned. I'm pretty concerned about January and February and how it's going to survive those 2 months, but if it can, it'll be bliss. But again, I don't think this will be around a lot longer post-Tonys. Here Lies Love, and that's closing, went from 88% to 92%, and 730,522 to 730,367 this week. How to Dance in Ohio played to 79% capacity, and 315K this week for 6 performances. And, pretty solid start, you know, I mean, it's not the best, but it's not terrible. Again, these are prestige best musical winners, so they're okay with losing money. But I will have to say, 315K is quite low. It's not great. I think I would have liked to have seen it have a 4 or 5 in front of it. I think 6 was probably the highest you would think. So it's not off to an amazing start, and based off of the previews and what people are saying, this might be more of a flop than a hit, because it seems to be getting a very mixed response, and if it doesn't get an acclaimed review from the NY Times, I predict that this will close before the Tonys happens, because I could see it not doing good at all. But it's luckily opened where we have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas, but January and February, I'm saying weird. But post-Christmas is when I'm most concerned for How to Dance in Ohio. Again, we have to see. It's off to a semi-promising start. Kimberly Akimbo went from 93% to 85%, and 657K to 562K. Again, I don't know how it's still surviving, because these are not great numbers, especially with how much money they lost before the Tonys. But again, as long as it's here, I'm okay with it. So I mean, David Stone, who's the producer of Wicked, also is producing Kimberly Akimbo, and so he must definitely be using that Wicked money to good use. Merrily We Roll Along went from 100% capacity to 100%, and 1,865,831 to 1,884,000 this week. And again, it's become one of the most best-selling musicals in the season, and I'm very happy about that, and I'm super excited to see it. And again, I think that while Daniel Radcliffe and Jonathan Groff is why it's doing so well, I do think there's a good 50% of it that is that, but a good 50% that is because it has become such a cult following, and Sondheim fans have become such huge fans of it that they want to see this so bad. So I definitely do think it's as much the celebrities in the show as it is the actual musical itself. Now, if Daniel hadn't been in this, would it be doing this? Probably not, but maybe it would still be making $1 million. I think that, this was just the right time at the right place. Moulin Rouge went from 99% to 96%, and 1,269,624 to $1,170,000 this week. Shocked, which is closing, went from 84% to 77%, and 753K to 641K, over 100K drop. Six went from 96% to 87%, and 999K to 860K. Some Like It Hot, and that's also closing, went from 881K to 746K, going from 74% to 65%. So overall, those three musicals didn't do so good this week. Spamalot went from 90% to 81%, and 753K last week to this week's 678K. Again, another solid week for Spamilton. You do want to see it stay in the 7s and the 8s, but again, it doesn't need to make $1 million or even need to make $800,000 a week, most likely to succeed, seeing as its set design is just screens and it's a very inexpensive musical. However, if it does continue in the 6s, I might get a little concerned. And realistically, they should have occasional 6s, but mostly 7s and 8s. But we'll see what happens with that. And then Sweeney Todd went from 98% to 90%, and 1,170,126 to 994,546. And that's because Josh Groban was out. Although still, it did exceptionally well, even without Groban. I mean, 994K is a number that most musicals dream of, and it still performed to 90% capacity. So overall, even without Groban in it, it's still doing exceptionally well. So those are the grosses for this week. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you next week. Peace.